Welcome to the Death Talk podcast. The vision for this podcast is to break the culture of silence surrounding death and dying. I'm your host, Lisa Murray. Welcome back to the Death Talk podcast. This is Lisa. This is part 2 of my 2-part interview with Dr. Joshua Black. We're talking about grief dreams, which is his area of research, as well as the name of his podcast. In this episode, we talk a little bit about how you can remember your dreams, and we also talk about dreams that we've had, and then we talk about maybe the meaning behind grief dreams. I hope you enjoy.
Well, the big thing just with remembering dreams is that because you're in a different physiological state when the dream is occurring, you actually really need to think about it so you can move it to like short-term memory to be able to write it down. So most people, when they have a dream, by the time they'll think about it, like, oh, I had a dream, then they'll think about something else. By the time they go back, it's gone because it was never encoded properly, or you just can't retrieve it properly. And so the best thing to do is when you wake up, keep your eyes closed, think about it so it goes to short-term memory, and then write it down. And that way you'll catch most of the details. And then as let's say you have cereal or you worry about the rest of your day, you're going to forget about it. But that's the beauty of dream journals, to go back and say, oh, wow, look at all these different dreams and how it reflects. And then with that, you're able to then spend time maybe later in the day to reflect on how it relates to the previous day and what you're working through and what you're trying to go through. So many dreams are very passive in nature, in the sense of what you think about, what you watch, your emotions will transfer very easily into your dreams. Other times there is that problem-solving quality, so it can be very active based on the circumstances you're dealing with. But I always tell people when they're starting out, because it's very difficult to understand your own dream language. Everyone has a unique one that's based on them. So like flying to you, going up in space is different than if, Derek had that dream. You'd love it. Right? Like it's
Yep.
And so, it's really understanding that we each have our dreams, our own dream language, and we can't trust the things we go online or in a dream dictionary that you buy. It's just not going to be useful for you. So it's really about like understanding and reflecting on yourself. And that's, I think, the challenge for people, because a lot of people, we're not trained to be emotionally intelligent in our lives and to reflect and do the introspection on how we're feeling and how we're processing things. We tend to avoid stuff pretty easily, and the mind helps us do that really well. And so it really forces you to actually look at yourself and look at the truth of who you are. And for me, like I had a dream that basically shocked me into understanding that I didn't love myself. And that was one of the biggest truths that I've learned that started me off valuing dreams, actually, because when I grew up, I had a lot of nightmares. And so my parents were just saying these dreams were from the devil. And so that's what it put it on. So I didn't want to understand the dream. I didn't even want to remember the dream. Like, who would want that? But now I realize, like those dreams were actually just based on me feeling in an unsafe environment, based on the school, of being bullied in school, and also the home environment, very unsafe. And so I had a lot of negative dreams because of that. But when I had this one dream that basically told me, I'll share it since we're talking about dream interpretation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just I was dating this woman, and she let me know, or she told me that she cheated on me. And I got so angry, so frustrated, so depressed. It was just a weird set of events because it completely destroyed me. I've never felt that kind of pain before in my entire life. Even after my dad died, it was a different kind of pain. This was something different. And I couldn't eat or sleep for like 3 days. And I couldn't understand, like, where was this pain coming from? And so finally, I just said to whoever was listening, because I grew up in a Christian home, as much as I didn't fully believe it, I grew up in it. And I just said, whoever is out there, help me understand where this pain is coming from. Because I don't know, like, how to, like, nothing's working to solve it. So at least if I can understand it, I can actually then work with it in some way. So then I went to bed and I had this dream. And the dream was, I was searching for something. I was running by this stream. The stream went like under bridges, over valleys. It felt like an eternity. And finally it went into this big ocean. And then I looked and there was a pier and there was someone standing at the pier. So I ran over to the person and he looked at me and I said, where is it? Where is it? Like I was looking for something. And he says, it could be over there pointing to the left of the ocean. He said, it could be over there pointing to the right, or it could be over there pointing straight ahead in the ocean. But then he looked at me with these very wise eyes that only, wise people have. Just like they know something. And he's like, you know where it truly is. And I said, where? And he pointed to his mind. And then I woke up with like a shot of lightning going through me. And not only did I feel that this dream had meaning, but I knew what it meant. And I had no idea about dreams even having meaning for me. And I knew right in that instant what the dream meant. And it was saying that it was my perspective on the events that were causing me the suffering. And that it was not their fault for how I was feeling. Like I was blaming her, I was blaming him. Not once did I ever look at myself, right? But what it was saying is that the pain is coming from the fact that you don't love yourself, and she was what you needed. And the way that it went down brought up all that insecurity in you. And I had to sit with that truth. And I would have said prior to that, if someone asked me, do you love yourself? I would have said yes. But after that moment, I realized, no, I didn't. And how interesting that was for me. So then I went, well, then how can I love myself, right? Like that's like the next question, right? Like once you understand the truth, it's like, how can I work with that? And from that day on, it's been that process of how can I work with that? And dreams have been helping me along the way to figure that out. And it's a slow process, but I got to say, like I've made tons of strides in doing that. And you start seeing these dreams, like with the grief dreams, and you see it all within there. And I think a lot of these, like after loss, one of the things that a lot of people I think maybe don't mention was how influential people are to the griever in helping them feel loved. And the world's so easy at tearing you down. Like there's so much stuff, and we have so much past ideas of who we are based on our own traumas and experiences that really limit on how we see ourselves. And so these people that we care for the most part, are the people that are telling us that we're important, and telling us that we're special, that we're loved, and that helps us feel it. And when they die, that's one less person telling us that. And so we're left in this kind of like void of trying to rebuild ourselves, with one less person amongst us. And can we believe that our life is important? Can we believe that we're worth it, that there's beauty in us? And I want to share a dream that I like to share just because it really talks about this topic. And it was Serena Dyer came on my podcast, and it was episode 76. And people may know her as the daughter of Dr. Wayne Dyer. He was like a spiritual teacher that passed away.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh.
A couple of years ago, right? And so she talked about her dreams of her father, but that wasn't what I want to talk about. Here, she recently had her stepson, Mason, die from a accidental drug overdose. And she felt very guilty, as if she could have done more, right? She could have been nicer. Maybe he wouldn't have turned to drugs, stuff like that. And so she's really struggling with this guilt from the way he died. And so she had this dream. So the dream was, Mason told me in the dream that I needed to stop with the guilt. He told me that the guilt was soul sabotaging and pointless. He said that everything in his life was the accumulation of choices he made, and that it was his correct path. He explained that our lives are classrooms, and when we die, we continue with those very lessons. He then told me to be careful with the thoughts I was choosing and the decisions I was making that were self-harming, because as he explained, the purpose of living is to love, and it must start with the self. He then laughed a little more and then released my hands, and I woke up. And it really goes to, it's such a powerful dream, and why I like to share it, because it helps explain people maybe some purpose of life if they believe in an afterlife. And even if they don't, it's still a beautiful concept to realize you got to focus on loving yourself as your goal. Because when we don't, we focus on loving other people or getting money or whatever, we're not going to be happy. We're not going to be in a space of joy, and we'll die not knowing what love actually is. And so for me, like I've been on that. So when I look at that dream, I'm like, yes, like that's the dream I kind of had in my own way back when the girlfriend cheated.
You've got me totally thinking about Derek's importance in my life. And, I've explained it before. It was like, I felt like I was in the bottom of the ocean of this strange land, and I was kind of running out of oxygen, and I didn't really fully connect with anybody here in this lifetime. Like, I liked people, but I didn't fully connect with anybody. Yeah. I felt very close with my brother, but it's different, like on a deep, deep connection. And he like swam up to me and put his, like scuba oxygen mask thing in my mouth. And so I could breathe oxygen. And he was looking at me. And that was like the first time I really felt like someone from, I always say from my planet, but whatever, from somewhere that I understood and he understood me. That was the first time I'd ever met anyone like that. And to this day, really, I mean, that fully deep kind of knowing and connection. And I think that's why it was so upsetting, obviously, to lose him. Yeah. And I was thinking as you were talking, I was like, I think one of the things I struggle with is if there's anybody else out there in the world that connects with something that I'm saying, or that, resonates like the way that he did, the way that I did for him. And I'm not talking about romantically. I'm just talking about informationally, like how we see the world, how we see why we're here, how to treat people, or what's important. There was just an ease and a direct connection with that. And I do struggle sometimes with that. Like, I wonder if, there's other people that are thinking the same way that I'm thinking. So yeah, thank you for that. Cause now I'm really like kind of realizing that might be an area that I need to look at for healing.
Oh, definitely. Right. Like, it's really also, like by talking about it, you're really understanding the significance a person had in your life more so than what you knew before. And that is so beautiful for people to understand what the other person actually gave them beyond what we were feeling, like we want them back, but it's about really self-reflecting on what they actually did for us. And to know that, it's possible for us to get there again. Like they gave us a lot of tools. They gave us the feelings of what it feels like. And now it's, say like it's our time to now focus on those aspects so we can get there. And they're a part of that growth because they're showing us that it's possible. As I said, like if you're feeling it, that means it's possible. And like, how can you feel it continually with or without people being in front of you? And that's, like, as I said, it's as long as you make it a goal, like with dreaming, you make it a goal to remember dreams. What's fascinating is what happens, you get more dreams. If you make it your goal to love who you are, what's going to happen is you're going to move towards that goal. Like you're going to have a lot of occurrences, aha moments as you get closer to that. But when we're not focusing on it, well, why would you approach that? Because a lot of times we want it, but we actually tend to avoid the truth because you got to sit with a lot of deep truths that are scary for people. But if you're willing to sit with that and to acknowledge it, well, you're going to be able to work through those things. And that's why, like, therapists and anyone who helps those people who with their grief, like, that's great. And it's amazing when you can have those tools around you. And sometimes it's friends and family. But just finding a way to focus on that and make it a goal.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. And I also think like, when Derek and Michael died, there were a couple people that died in my life before Derek. And then there was a few people that died after. So it was like a whole, I call them cluster death, because that's what made me want to start the podcast. Cause I realized I obviously need to deal with the topic of death and, cause it was inescapable. I was like everywhere for a chunk of time. And, one of the things that I really hope that someone who is dealing with loss recognizes, and it connects to what you were just saying, is that after the person dies and some of the initial grief has kind of calmed down a little bit, I think whatever helps you get through life, if whatever that is, if that is focusing on a goal, like wanting to love yourself more or realizing that that's something you need to do, or wanting to have a deeper relationship with your subconscious and your dreams, or wanting to continue your connection with the person who passed, and, look into being able to sense energies and, communicate with the other side, or whatever it is, whatever life's mysteries you want to explore, let that be your goal and let that be the thing that you explore, because that will be the thing that will keep you here. And maybe that's the reason even why you're here and why all of this happened, because I just had this visual of like, it was like life was a stage, so I'm picturing myself on a stage, and I knew every prop that was on the stage. I knew every piece of fabric, every table, everything. And then I fell through a trap door underneath the stage and everything was dark. And I was just wanting to die. And I hated life and I wish I wasn't here. But all of a sudden it was like someone turned on a light and I looked up and I could see the whole stage, but from underneath it, and everything was glowing and everything had it was the same exact pieces of furniture, but they all had a different light on them now. And they all had different meanings. And now that's where I kind of live my life for the most part, is underneath, kind of looking at everything differently. And I don't think you can even, and I say this in quotes and stuff, but it's true. You can't even really talk about death or deal with grief unless you think about life. You have to, they're connected. There's no way to disconnect that unless you consciously do that, because you need to only focus on one part of it for a while, which is fine, but they're part of the same thing. And so I think when we grieve, we almost have to see the full picture and see how it's connected to your life, and see that maybe, and I didn't want to do this when Derek Michael died. I was really adamant against that. Like, I don't want to benefit from their deaths. I don't want to say I'm a better person. But honestly, like, it gets to the point where you have to make a choice. I did. I was either going to become bitter or I was going to become a better version of myself in their honor, whatever I need to do for all that. And so I am working on improving who I am and helping other people and loving people more, doing more, putting the podcast out, doing all kinds of different ways that, maybe isn't 100% comfortable for me all the time, but pushing myself and growing and learning. And that's like the best way, I think, to deal with grief, is to just, so I love that you said that it's a goal, and you set a goal. And once you set a goal, you start to see the way to make that goal happen, and different things light up in that path. But if you don't think about it, you won't see that path. So if you think it's the end and you don't want to live anymore and you're depressed about the person you lost, then it will be just darkness for a while. But if you can have a tiny bit of curiosity, a tiny bit, that'll become more and more and more and more. And pretty soon you're on a path of discovery and learning things and experiencing things that'll keep you here.
That's totally true. And you're right. It's just having that little bit. Like, you don't need all of it, right? Some people, which, it bugs me and bugs a lot of people when they just say, oh, they're happier in heaven or whatever, right? They're minimizing your grief.
Yeah.
No, like, sit with the sadness. Like, your body knows what it's doing, so let it do what it's doing. But at the same time, see if you can have a little bit of hope, or a little bit of, can you find something in there to, help you out? So it's not a complete mess, but there's something there, right? Like, there's just a sliver of light. And as you work through it and acknowledge your loss, that light's going to get bigger and bigger. And then you'll realize what you've actually done and what you sat through. And I think a lot of times we want to rush the process in life, with just not grief, but everything. We try to rush it rather than just sitting with what is. And if someone just died, sit with that fact. It's really horrible, and sit with that pain. And if you can have a good support system around you, what's going to happen is those people will sit with you in your pain. It's not about moving you. It's about just sitting with you. I always feel that the body knows what it needs to do, right? But a lot of times we don't give it the time of day to just work properly. We want to, rush it. We want to tell it that it needs to do something. But really, if you just sit with it, it'll tell you when it's time that, you're going to stop crying sooner or than later. And in those times, well, it's break time. Get something to eat, do something to regulate some of your emotions. But then when the tears come, feel them. Like, it knows. And sooner or later, you'll see over the period of time, if you can sit with it, those periods become different. And you'll start seeing that once that small sliver of light, now it's actually a lot bigger. And as you move forward, you'll have both those things. You'll have these really beautiful days because you're willing to sit with your suffering, but you also have some still sadness as you move forward with triggers and everything like that. And that's beautiful in itself, because those are the times you're remembering what you've been through and who is not alive at this moment, and how you're walking in this world without them. So, like, there's that double side of everything we do moving forward, is that it's completely horrifying that we had to go through it. But at the same time, we've changed in ways, hopefully, that have benefited the world. And so that's really what I see is yourself, to be able to not only understand that you get through this, but to have compassion for others who are going through it, to be able to sit with them when they need you. And like the truth about it in my life is I look back, I have some regrets when people told me that they had lost you as a parent that died. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. And I just went on doing whatever. Like I never sat with them. And I always feel bad about that, because that was the one thing I needed when my dad died. And I did have a partner at that time who sat with me, which is really good. And, that helped in its own way. But, like I look back at those other moments where I'm like, man, I wasn't even there. I'm like, man, I would have done that totally different. And that made me such a better person, because I sat with some of my pain, and I could look back and be honest with myself, saying, I screwed up on that one, and you can apologize or not, but it's just like, for the next person that comes, I'm going to do a better job to just being a better human. And, hopefully we can. Hopefully these moments of complete destruction in our life can be used to build a better foundation to help others as we move forward.
Yeah, I'm so grateful that I went through this, and just for the sake of being able to have more empathy. Like you said, I thought I was great. When someone said someone passed away, I thought I had a good spiritual, I don't know, vibe about it. I thought I was like, oh, I'm really sorry, but I think that after it happened, oh gosh, one of the early thoughts I had was, oh, I had no idea. And I'm sure I said the wrong thing most of the time. And you're right. It's so much about just sitting with it, both for ourselves and also for others. And people, I was in a Clubhouse room the other day, and the topic was what not to say or what to say to someone when they lost someone. And, people were saying different things. And I said, at the end of the day, you might end up saying the wrong thing. If you haven't gone through it, you're not going to know. So you're probably going to say the wrong thing. But just knowing that you're trying and that you care and that you're actually feeling a little bit of what I'm feeling, that went a long way when I think about people that were there. And then the people that just avoided me because they were so afraid that they didn't want to say the wrong thing, that hurts so much.
Yeah. And I think you take a lot of advice from like our pets that people have, because when you look at grief with people who are pet owners, and what they'll say is that like after someone dies, their pets have been so important in their own grief support. And you're like, how? They're not talking. They're not doing anything. What are they doing? And they're realizing they're just being with the person as they're crying, and not judging them, not telling them, oh, let's go drink or let's go to the movies. They're sitting with them. If it's, what do you need right now? If it's just watching a movie, let's watch a movie. If it's going for a walk, let's go for a walk. But they don't say anything. And I think that's the greatest lesson that I think animals can give us, is how to work with people who are grieving. It's like, you don't need to say anything.
Yeah.
Just a look of just, I'm here for you is what they need, and whatever they want, it's just let them decide.
And even young dogs seem to know to just be a little bit like, they'll be playful, but you can tell they're a little bit subdued.
Right.
It's interesting. It's like they know that this is a serious time, and just let it be what it is.
Yeah.
I love that.
Emotions come. Yeah.
I wanted to say one more thing about the dreams. And I love everything we're talking about. So just first, I just want to thank you, because this is like kindred spirit conversation. I love it. I've had a few dreams, and I've heard people have these kind of dreams too, where you don't see the person, but you know that they're there. You know that the dream is them, but you don't ever see them. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah. So either sometimes it's not even like they're maybe a different form, like an animal, or it could be even a cloud I've seen, and the cloud talks, or it's, a radiator, or there's a medium and then they're speaking through a medium, but there's this essence of them, a part of it. Other times there's these dreams where it's not them, but there's a message from them in a way. So it's an angel or God saying something about them. But yeah, like there's all forms and different types of dreams.
Because my mom did say she had, and it was more recent, but she said she did know that she dreamt about my brother, but she doesn't remember anything about it. And she doesn't remember actually seeing him or anything like that.
Yeah. So like, it could be one of those things that you're in a room of a bunch of people. I've seen this dream recently. You're in a room, bunch of people, the person's there. You just can't see them, but you see other people. But that feeling of just that they're around. I think, yeah. So it's common.
I just want to tell you my experience with that one time was, and I don't really know if it was a dream, but I just want to leave the listener with this thought, just in case you don't have a dream or remember your dream with people, the loved ones that you've lost. When I was dating Derek, I had moved to Chicago to help take care of my grandmother, who's like the most important person in my life. And I wanted to be with her when she died. And she ended up living for like 3 years after she was brought home from the nursing home. And she had 24-hour nurses. But anyway, so I was with her when she died. And sorry, hold on. My dog is coughing. I'm going to have to cut this part out. Pickles, what's the matter? It's okay. Oh boy. Sorry. Oh my gosh. Can you hear it?
That's all right. It's just life.
Okay.
Leave it in.
I know you're a pet person. You understand. So by the way, when he passes, I'm going to be, it's going to mess me up, but that's how it is with every dog that I've ever had. But he's sort of been around during a lot of actually he was there when Derek died. So yeah, because I got him in 2009. Okay. So when my grandmother died, I was alone with her in the room, and she was very Catholic. And so I was reading I was doing the rosary with her, and I felt her go through my body. I felt her go through my heart and go up through the ceiling. And I had this visual of like this little golden treasure chest that she left in my heart. And I still don't completely understand what that is all about, but that's something I visualized. But so out of all of her furniture, she had a lot of really great furniture. I don't mean to like skip forward to like some superficial thing, but it reminds me of this chest. One of my favorite pieces of furniture that she had was like a sideboard. It was kind of like a wavy, old English looking piece of furniture from her dining room. And I never thought I would ever get it because I thought my mom was like, I want that. It was just like some beautiful thing. And my mom said, well, if you want that, why don't you just take it? And I thought, well, that's weird. So I got it, and I could never find the keys, like the big skeleton keys that go in and open up all the different doors and drawers and stuff. And so anyways, I looked everywhere when my grandmother passed away and we had to go through all the stuff in her attic and everything. I looked everywhere, tried every key. And Derek was with me during that time. He knows we were looking for that key. So years in the future, I have the piece of furniture in my home in LA, and then Derek dies. And right within the, few weeks after him dying, I took a nap during the day. And when I woke up, nothing has ever happened like this before to me or since. I knew where the key was. I don't remember anybody telling me anything about it. I just got up. I went downstairs. I opened up the one drawer that was unlocked. I put my hand all the way in the back. I lifted up the piece of paper, and it was at an angle. So that's why you couldn't see it if you pulled the drawer out. It was at an angle underneath the drawer liner.
Oh, wow.
And I reached in and I felt the key, and I just went, thanks, Derek. I knew he showed me where that key was.
Yeah,
and it was
wild.
amazing.
Oh, man.
And I just loved it.
I want to sort of just affirm that is possibly to be true, and you just didn't remember the dream. I've seen dreams like that where people are looking for things they can't find, and then they had this dream with the deceased that shows them where it is. And it just seems like you just didn't remember that image of what happened, and that's the mystery. So like that, you just showcase how maybe these dreams are really impacting us more than we think they are, because maybe there's growth occurring from these dreams, but we're not remembering them. So we don't think it's helping, right? We're longing for something that we're actually probably getting, but we just can't remember it. So that's fascinating. I love that story.
Yeah. And I also felt like it was like he was trying to show me that he's going to be there. He's got my back. He's got another vantage point. He's going to help me. And so to keep the relationship going, and like even to get hiking again, I would picture him, like walking in front of me, because he was always more fit than I was. And so whenever we go hiking, when I go hiking, I would picture him in front of me, and little things like that, like continuing the relationships. I'm around my mom and my uncle a lot recently, and I'm picturing my brother is there with us. And if that helps, then that helps. And so that's the kind of, and I need to do that. I need to continue the relationship. I can't feel like that relationship is done. It has to keep going. Just it's in a different form now. So Derek showed me the key to show me like I'm still here. And that really helped me.
Yeah.
So
which is amazing. And it should. Like anyone who downgrades the importance of that doesn't understand even the research. And so continue that on, because the love hasn't died. So why would our memories and why would our relationship die? Like, so let's continue that. Let's make new memories with the individual. And that's what these dreams do, which I kind of like, but also your other experiences on what you're doing, talking to them and just understand that they're watching you in different ways and supporting you. Say if you're spiritual, that's beautiful, because it's definitely helping you to feel loved and to feel protected as you move forward. And who doesn't want that? I definitely want that. It's beautiful. And so let's continue it on. But, there's always those people that want to minimize that and want to control your mood in different ways. And it's just, like you have to learn discernment on, whose advice or whose words that you take and digest. And so same thing with these dreams, right? Like a lot of people will have a lot of ideas and comments on your dreams, and you really have to use discernment on how you take those, because a lot of people have a lot of biases through these dreams and they have no experience with the research. So they're just talking based on their own ideas on what they want you to believe about life. But when you actually look at the research, you see something different. And that's why I did the stuff I did. We barely had a chance to talk about any of it.
Oh my God, I'm sorry.
But at the end of the day, that's okay. Like I got an online course that people can learn more about that, or they go on the website, griefdreams.ca, and there's common questions that people ask. And there's a podcast, right? And then I also post a bunch of dreams on my Instagram feed. But it's just like, you got to be able to develop this yourself, because there's cultures have different perspective on it, like religions and people and doctors. Everyone has their thought, but like no one's saying, I wonder what the research says. Because when you look at it, you just realize, oh, I can sit with this, or oh, it's not them in hell haunting me, or no, like these dreams are a reflection of my trauma. And like maybe if I work through that trauma, I can then have more positive dreams. Oh, maybe, like another big thing for people is that when they don't have dreams, they think that the deceased is mad at them, or that maybe they didn't cross over properly. And so that's one of the other reasons that research was so important, because when I talk to many of those people, it comes out that they don't really remember their dreams in general. And so you can see how the mind was complicating their grief through telling them the answer of not having a dream was something negative about the individual soul or their relationship together, rather than that they don't remember their dreams. And that's okay. So it's just like through the research, you can actually minimize a lot of the damage that people say when it comes to this topic.
Yeah. And I think it comes down to taking personal responsibility for your own healing and journey in life. And you can't fully listen to anybody else. If it doesn't resonate true with you, or if it's not helping you, because at the end of the day, you have to keep going. As long as you're alive, you're alive and you're here, and you got to deal with stuff. And so if researching, do that, then research, go to your website, go to, griefdreams.ca and research take one of your classes. Like there's things that we can do. Like I did, I got a dream book where I was analyzing my dreams. You have to work on it. It's not just, that nothing's just good or bad. It's a matter of, your relationship to your bigger reason for being here and your beliefs and all of that and everything else. So absolutely. It's like personal responsibility.
Yeah, it's big. It's hard, right? Because we want to trust people who we feel is maybe we put them on a pedestal, so we trust everything they say. And sometimes it's great, other times it's not. like it's just really, you're right. Just taking the ownership. If you want the answers, go seek and read some of the research, and it's like the website. That's why I made the website, because everything that was out there was actually limiting people on where they could go in their grief. And I wanted a place where people could actually understand the information that's actually out there, to maybe have a more of objective view and maybe what they're trying to deal with. And, when their dream may be more quote unquote visitation than others, because it's always the worst when someone has a negative dream and they call it a visitation. Like that breaks my heart, because it hurts them on so many levels as they're trying to work through their own grief and waking life.
Yeah, it sounds like people are dealing with a lot of their own fears and different things,
Mhm.
and then thinking that's a fact, and that's just not the way dreams. Well, if it's a dream, which it sounds like it is, if you're dealing with fears and stuff. So I'm so glad you're doing the work you're doing, and I'm glad that your website is a resource for people to see some of the research that's being done. Where else? So you say Instagram. I need to follow you on Instagram, and is that where you're most active? Is Instagram?
I love Instagram. It's taken me a little time to, I've been on there for a couple of times, a couple of years, but I'm really loving it and just be able to post streams and, anything that comes out. I just love that platform the most. I'm most active on that, but I also have it like on Facebook. I have the Grief Dreams podcast page, and then also a Grief Dreams Facebook group where you could submit dreams, and like there's a community that will respond or just listen to you. Because I think for the most part, many people, well, I've learned along the way, most people don't share their dreams that they have of others, and there's an impact on that in their grief journey. And so to be able to share it in a space, I think it's great to just process what you're going through. And if you're looking for answers, they may get it through there. Also, I'm doing like one-on-one consultations with people if they want to talk to me about their dreams. That's something that they can also do.
Well, I would love to have you back, and maybe we can get some listener submitted questions or dreams, and maybe you can talk to that, and then also maybe a little bit more about your research.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, there's a lot, and there's a lot to talk about, right? Like I'll just like put some tidbits out there for you guys to think about. And one of them is how people can get dreams of the deceased that's meant for someone else. So they'll have so a person will have a dream, but the deceased will say, tell my dad, blah, blah, blah. And then, the courage it takes to then go to sometimes it's just like just an acquaintance. You don't really know. To then say, hey, you remember me from high school? Like I had this dream. And,
Yeah.
like that's something that they need because they haven't had that in their own life and they're seeking it. So it's just very interesting on the gamut of mystery when it evolves this topic. I said like the precog dreams, and then there's other dreams of just how people see the afterlife and how these dreams can actually reinforce people's beliefs on the afterlife, because in grief, that's one of the things that gets challenged, that the world's unjust and maybe there is nothing, but yet they'll have these experiences to then help them put that back together to be able to have a stronger faith as they move forward. And I think, there's something beautiful about that in the sense of, what that gives a person to make it through some of the hard times.
Whenever I have a dream about somebody after they've passed that I didn't really know intimately, like I knew there was a man that I worked for when I worked at Paramount Pictures. He was the head of sales, Don Harris. He was very well known. He used to be he was like head of sales for DreamWorks, and then DreamWorks merged with Paramount. So I was one of the assistants to the top 3 guys. But then after 5:00, the other assistants would leave and I would be everybody's assistant for the last hour. And I really loved this guy. So when I had a dream about him, I actually have several dreams about him where I just see him. We don't talk about anything, but I just see him and he looks happy. I decided to reach out to his daughter on Facebook, who I maybe met like when she came to the office one time. But she posts about him a lot and how much she misses him. And so I did just send her a message and I just said, hi, I think you met me like once. But I just wanted you to know that I've had some dreams about your dad and he looks really happy. And, I don't know, some people might be mad, some people might feel
jealous.
Yeah, jealous, or like, what do you mean? Why would you dream about him? Why didn't he talk? Or, but she was wonderful. She was like, thank you so much. Thank you for telling me. And that really meant a lot to her. So even if I don't really know the person very well, I do try to tell people. And also my next door neighbor, her dad died and she hasn't been able to have any dreams about him. That's the other thing. I feel really bad because they know that I have these dreams and then they go, well, I never dream. And I'm like, oh, here we go. So I'm going to be sending them over to your website from now on.
Hey, that's great. And I think it's beautiful that you're even talking about these dreams, because the reality is, before I came around, there was enough research for people to even be trained in the topic. And so if you take Thanatology or any kind of counseling course when it comes to grief, they've never been trained on this subject. So a lot of people avoid it, or they don't provide any kind of understanding for the people who are seeking help. So like now it's just like I'm just feel grateful to be a part in a position that now hopefully all those people who work with the bereaved can now know something more about their line of work. And I've talked to many clinicians or people who work in the field that just never knew to even ask, right? And like the research, the one thing I should say is that probably, I would say a conservative estimate is around 75% of people, children or adults, will dream of the deceased, within the first couple of years after loss. But yet we don't know much about them. And those numbers change based on, like kids, it's around 55%, said spouses around 89 or 86%, and miscarriage around 50%. But that's huge. Pet loss is around like 78% in my research. But those are huge numbers that we haven't been talking and that no one is talking about. And I think that should really open people's eyes to why this research is needed and why more of it is needed as we move forward. Because I don't want to be the only one doing this stuff. You need help. And so hopefully, the more we can get the awareness on the importance of this topic, the more people will study it and actually treat it for what it is, which is, another part of the grief journey.
Do you remember those suitcases that had the wheels that were like, it had a little handle on the suitcase and you'd pull it and it would wobble and fall over because the wheels were, or maybe you're not old enough to remember those suitcases.
I don't know.
Okay. I'm telling you, this is like those, when we decided to finally like put the wheels the other way and then bend the suit, tilt it down with the longer handle. It's so obvious. People struggled for so long with those stupid little wheels. And that's how I feel about like studying dreams of the deceased. Is it's so powerful and so many people have them. Why is it always looked at like some quirky, weird thing on the dreamer's part, as opposed to it being a very serious part and important part of understanding probably death and grief and so many more things. So
yeah, it's so true, right? Like I said, just understanding where the person's at in their grief, right? Like that's why it's so great for clinicians, because there's a lot of information you can take from that. And one, I guess wrapping up, one of the things I found in my research, and you can see it across cultures, is that there's this dream where the deceased is encouraging the individual to take their own life. And if you don't ask about these dreams, you don't know how the person is going to interpret that dream and maybe even take their life based on that advice if they see it as a visitation, right? But what my research is showing is actually based more on trauma. And so that is a huge red flag for anyone who's working in that field. So that's why we need to ask about this, because we can save lives and help people heal and adapt maybe a little better than what we're given, because there's so much rich information in these dreams.
Gosh, wow. That sounds like a very horrible, horrible dream. But I'm so glad you're doing this research then, even more important. Thank you. Well, thank you so much for talking with me today. And I could talk to you forever. I feel very like this is everything that I love talking about on any normal day. So this is great for me. But thank you. And I know that if anybody has any questions, I'll have all of the links and everything in the show notes on deathtalkpodcast.com. But definitely check out the website. I've lost it. Where is it? griefdreams.ca. Lots of great information there. You've got a link to your course, to your 2 courses and your podcast. And did you have a book on there? Do you have a book on there?
Yeah, I have a children's book.
Oh, great.
Book. Yeah, they can look at.
Thank you. Oh, that's so good. Thank you for all the work you're doing. And I definitely want to have you back.
Hey, just let me know when you're ready. And hopefully, you can continue to have some really beautiful dreams. And hopefully those listeners too can have some very positive dreams tonight.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you. Wow, I hope you enjoyed this 2-part interview as much as I did. I could literally talk about dreams forever. Speaking of which, I have an invitation for you, the listener. If you would like to submit a dream that you've had, I would love to hear about it and either read it in an episode or save it for when Dr. Black comes back for another future interview. So you can send it to deathtalkcafe@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.